Good morning, ladies. Welcome to our weekly Amunah Shir. This morning's Shir is sponsored by Alegrina Ben Smian and Joseph Ben Smian, known affectionately as JB, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of her beloved husband, his beloved father, David Ben Smian. Olav HaShalom, his neshama, should have an aliyah through the Torah that we will learn. If you have not yet taken on a week to sponsor, please do so. You can contact Linda in the office, and it goes in the email, and obviously on the recording. And the learning is in honor and memory of that person. So please, if you've not yet sponsored, please take a week to sponsor. Also, before we delve back into the Nesiva Shalom, two announcements, two reminders. Number one is that this Sunday, the annual Amazing Women's Health and Halacha Day and luncheon will be taking place. This year's schedule is even better than ever. Grateful to Shira Menzer, who's one of the co-chairs with Diane Sakagu and Lori Landa. You have flyers in front of you. It has a schedule. You see that there are 12 classes, something for everyone on every topic. There's an opening breakfast, a great luncheon honoring 3 special people afterwards. Again, space is filling up. You don't want to miss out. It's going to be an amazing, amazing day. If you've not yet registered, please do so. And lastly, our seminar with Dr. John Gottman on exploring relationships, how to make relationships work. John Gottman is the undisputed, recognized authority on marriage around the world. He is recognized, quoted, admired. Just Google his name, you'll see everything about him. It's incredible that we are actually able to host him personally. It's on Sunday, January 28th. And to tell you how amazing it is, by the end of November, 300 people have already signed up and paid. Which means that if you want a seat, you better do it soon because we're going to run out of room. It's an absolutely incredible opportunity and really unusual opportunity. So please take these flyers, register for both before you get closed out. Nesiva Shalom, we are on page Samach Hey, Maimer Hey called Yisodi HaTorah. We are in the middle of the chapter about Dveikus. And again, we've been divining. I've been mentioning this every week. That Emunah is the philosophical, theoretical knowledge that there is a God, a creator of the universe, that we don't exist randomly, that we didn't come into being out of nowhere. We believe fundamentally that there's a creator, there's a first cause. Bitachon is that first cause, that creator, didn't build a world and move on, but he continues to relate to me. And therefore all that happens in my life, I should understand, didn't happen randomly, but happened for a reason. And lastly, Dveikus is the knowledge that I need to cling to him, I need to attach myself to him, I have to stick with him, I have to realize that whatever I'm longing for, whatever I'm hoping for, whatever I need, whatever I received, whatever I'm grateful for, it's all from him. So, the worst thing you can do in a relationship is to neglect or to make the other party who's done something for you feel invisible. It's the worst thing. When you do something for someone, you put yourself out there for someone else, and they don't acknowledge it. They don't ever say thank you, they don't ever acknowledge it, and they make you feel invisible. It's very painful. It's cruel. It's cruel of the other person. So here we are living our lives. You got out of bed this morning. Your eyes and your ears and your mouth and your legs work. You have a roof over your head and a car to drive and food to put in your mouth. And you have a heartbeat in your chest and breath in your nostrils. And if you don't say thank you, Hashem, that's unbelievable. And today, by the way, of all days, at 1 p.m. today, there'll be a historic announcement. I'm not like an insider. It's not like, I'm not telling you anything that was shared privately with me. But I was almost tempted this morning to say Hallel and davening. It is a historic day. How long did our people yearn to be validated? I mean, on the one hand, it's a historic day. On the other hand, it's a ridiculous day. There's nothing historic about telling you your mother's your mother. Like, there's nothing, you need someone else to validate you that this is your mother's your mother. But on the other hand, when the whole world says that that's not really your mother, she's my mother, so someone says, you know what? She's your mother. I acknowledge that. That's unbelievable. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal day. We should all have tremendous hakaras hatov, and we should daven from the depths of our heart that there should not be harsh consequences. Although I spoke to my daughter in Israel earlier this morning, she told me it was cold and raining. And what terrorists would want to go out in the rain? They blow themselves up on a nice day. Who wants to go out? It's already raining outside. That was her. I told her she should still be careful, despite that brilliant analysis of the situation. She should be careful nonetheless. So it's a historic day, but we have to realize that when an incredible thing happens, when a historic moment happens, there's hakaras hatov to the human being, to the dignitary, to the diplomat who made it happen. But we can't forget Ubod Tidbak, the Dveikus, attaching ourselves to the Creator who has brought the day, right? Who took after 2,000 years of exile, brought us back to our homeland, and then in our homeland have had 70 years where we've been denied that Yerushalayim is our capital. And now, please God, everything should go through and go smoothly. We have to realize where it comes from. I mentioned this morning on the Amuna WhatsApp group, but I'll share it live in person as well, that in our Parsha, at the very end of the Parsha ends when Yosef tells the Sar HaMashkim, he tells the wine bearer, listen, when you get out, don't forget the little guys. Don't forget me. Right? You were so unhappy. You had such depression. You had such melancholy. I noticed how sad you were, and I asked you how you were doing, and because of that, I interpreted your dream, and that's how you're out of here. When you get out, don't forget me. So Chazal note that Yosef doesn't say once, remember me. Yosef says twice. Remember me, don't forget me, remember me. And Chazal say, based on this, Yosef spent another 2 years in jail. Why? Because he put his faith in man. The Sar HaMashkim. He says to the Sar HaMashkim, when you get out, I need you. There's no way I'm going to get out without you, so remember me. He pleads with him. And Chazal see it as excessive. He pleads with him. Don't forget me, remember me twice. And because of that, he spent 2 years. Now that's a threshold, that's a bar that we're not measured by, because we could never live up to that. But Yosef's Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef is the one who, Emunah, who Shem Shamayim Shkura B'fiv. We spoke in the Parsha class yesterday. That Yosef, Hashem's name is dripping from his lips. Be'ezras Hashem, Amirta Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Chasdei Hashem. Yosef, in every conversation with Potiphar, in next week's Parsha with Paro, he's always talking about Hashem. And the Shlah Kadosh says that Hashem was with Yosef. He's an Ish Matzliach. Why? Because Shem Shamayim Shagur B'fiv. When you talk about Hashem is, when you invite Hashem into the room, Hashem's in the room. And things are much better when Hashem is in the room. He's closer, he's supervising, he's interceding, so he's interfering on your behalf. So the Hatzlacha, the Shlah says, is directly proportional. The success directly correlates with talking about Hashem. So the Shlah says, we should emulate Yosef. If you could do it, we can. Baruch Hashem, Mirtash, please God in God's will. However you want it, whatever language you want to say it in. But we talk about Hashem. So Yosef is this great one who talks about Hashem, and here he fails. Because he says to the Sar HaMashkim, don't forget, I need you twice. So he spends 2 years. So Reb Chaim Brisker, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik said, what if Yosef had only asked him once? What would have happened? If I'd asked you, and you didn't read the Amunah WhatsApp group chat yet, if I said to you, what would Yosef had only asked the Sar HaMashkim, please remember me when you get out? What would have been the punishment? What would you say?
1 year.
You would have said 1 year. If for asking twice, he got 2 years. For asking once, he'd get 1 year. Said Reb Chaim Brisker, wrong. You know how many years he'd get? No years. Why? Because there's nothing wrong with hishtadlus. You have to ask once because you have to show your effort. You have an opportunity. You have a opening. You have to take it. You have to walk through it. But on the other hand, you can't do it excessively. This is what we've talked about every week, is the balance. Emunah or bitachon or dveikus can't become a crutch. It can't become an excuse to living a passive life where you show no initiative. Where you sit on the couch and think someone's going to drop off a bag of cash at your front door. Where you get sick and you sit on the couch and you think miraculously you're going to get better. Hashem wants us to go to the doctor, and He wants us to go to work, and He wants us to take initiative. However, on the other hand, too much initiative, you've denied Hashem's role. So if you take too much initiative, you make it as if Hashem can't. I always give this example when it comes to the lottery. When there's a mega I don't know why, as if like 50 million wouldn't be enough, but when the mega millions goes up to 300, 400, $500 million, I always buy a ticket. How many tickets should you buy? So on the one hand, can you win the lottery without buying a ticket? No. So you need to take initiative. As is famously said, you got to be in it to win it. So you got to buy a ticket if you're going to win. However, it's also to buy more than one ticket. Why? Because statistically, every time I buy that ticket, which is very infrequently, you're online and you watch people in front of you who don't have enough money to pay for the gas outside, and they're spending every penny on, give me 25 tickets. And you want to grab them and tell them, like, just Google this, and you'll realize that you have not improved your chances statistically. Right? The person thinks, well, if one ticket and I buy 2 tickets, I've doubled my chance of winning. No, you still have a 0.0000000 whatever chance of winning. You haven't doubled your chance. So it's to buy 2 tickets is usher. It's not more initiative because you have no more chance of winning statistically. So you buy 1 ticket because you can't win without buying 1, but buying 2 shows that you don't think Hashem could help you win with just the 1 ticket, with just the 1 winning numbers. Last week I came late with my son to Avos Ubanim. So when you come late, if you come on time, you get 2 tickets for the raffle. And if you come late, you get 1 ticket. So when I got the 1 ticket, at first the piece in me was like, it's true I'm late, but like, I'm the rabbi. Like, you have no idea why I was late and what I was doing and that I created this program and then I would have it like, my son, you're not going to give 2 tickets? And then I stopped myself and I realized 2 things. Number one, adrabah, that's arrogance. Just with humility, you're no different than anyone else. You came late, you get 1 ticket. But then I also thought exactly this, which is, what, my shy can't win with 1 ticket? If Hashem wants him to win the raffle, he's going to win with the numbers on 1 ticket. No, he absolutely lost. And he wants to know why we never win. But the point is, it's nice to know these ideas of emunah, bitachon, dveikus, and theory. I give you these examples not to try to make it like I'm some tzaddik. First of all, I only tell you the stories where I did the right thing. I don't tell you the stories where I blew it. But I'm telling you these stories because I'm trying to show that the challenge, my challenge, our challenge, is in real time, is in real life. So you could be sitting there stewing and now distracted from the quality learning time with your son that you barely carve out every week because you're busy stewing about, should I fire this guy? Should I have a conversation with him? How am I going to tell him that like you didn't have a lot of intelligence, not giving? But the second you say, you know what? Hashem can make him win with 1 ticket in a humble, I'm no different than anyone else, and who cares? And get back to the learning. You have so little time, enjoy the time. So your life gets better with emunah and dveikus. Your life is only something which is better. So Yosef, if he wouldn't have asked the Sarah Mashkim, he never would have gotten out of jail because you got to show initiative. You can't rely on a miracle. In Samchan al Nes, but by asking twice, it was excessive initiative. You can't have excessive initiative because that shows a failure and the lack of dveikus. By the way, anyone know what day of the year it was that Yosef got out of prison? What day of the Jewish calendar it was? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvoro. It was Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, new beginnings. How did Yosef get that new beginning? He had a fresh start and a new beginning. He got a new lease on life. He got out of prison, got to start again. And you talk about a new lease on life. He didn't go into the witness protection program in hiding. He became the viceroy of Egypt. He became the vice president of all of Egypt. One of, if not the most powerful man. Secretary of the economy. So how did that happen? How did it happen? So commentaries point out, you know how it happened? Yosef's sitting in prison. Think about Yosef's life for a moment. He has been, he's been attempted murder by his brothers, turned into a sale, kidnapped and sold, sent to a foreign land. He's an immigrant in a foreign country where Jews are not loved. He works in a home where he brings great prosperity, but then he has the challenge of being seduced by a powerful woman who falsely accuses him. I mentioned yesterday in the Parsha class. This week is the inverse of last week. Last week's Parsha is a vulnerable woman, Dinah, who was exploited by a powerful man, Shechem. And the challenge is, will we step up for her? Will we make a difference? This week you have an innocent man who a woman uses her sexuality to try to seduce him and to try to exploit him. He overcomes it. She falsely accuses him and he suffers the consequences. It's the inverse. Last week the woman is the victim and the community's responsibility is to stand up for her. And this week the man is the victim and we have to forget that we also have a responsibility to protect such victims as well. Those who are the victims of women exploiting their power and victims of people making false accusations. So Yosef lands in prison and he's struggling and he's suffering and you ask me, I'd give up hope. I'd wallow in the corner by myself. I'd moan and I'd groan and I'd feel bad for myself because here I am, alienated from my brothers, from my father with whom I was so close, nafsho kshura b'nafsho, our souls intertwined, trying to make a life for myself, succeeding and then having to fail, literally going back to a pit, just like I was in the pit before, and I'd wallow. But Yosef doesn't do that. You know what he does? He sees the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Ophim. He sees 2 guys and they're pretty depressed. And he says, hey brothers, what's going on? Why are you so down? And that question changed his life. By not wallowing in the corner by himself, by not focusing on his own problems, but asking how he can help relieve the problem of others, he finds freedom. He finds liberty. Because asking them makes them share the dreams. He interprets the dreams. They get out. They remember him, or Sarah Mashkim remembers him, and that's how he gets out. So the Sfarim say that Yosef gains a new lease on life, his Rosh Hashanah, his new beginning, and our new beginning comes not when we wallow in the corner, woe is me for my problems, but despite my problems, I say, I want to help you with your problems. Why the long face? Why are you so sad? What's going on? How can I help you? What's doing? And when Yosef does that, he gets the new lease on life. So that's Dveikus. Yosef was supposed to ask the Saramashkim, remember me on your way out. He was not supposed to ask twice. On a day like today, this major historical day, we have tremendous Hakar Satov, the president, the cabinet, and the advisors, and all those who came to this very uncomfortable, and we don't yet know how uncomfortable decision. But on the other hand, we also have to give Hakar Satov. We give Hakar Satov on the human realm. We have to give Hakar Satov upstairs with that sense of Dveikus as well. Okay, we left off. We're on page Samachet, the bottom left corner. Shitas Aram Shalom Be'Be'er Mitzvah Adas Droshes Chazal K'mashikosim B'Sefer HaMitzvos. Again, we're still defining the mitzvah of Dveikus. How do you cling to Hashem? How do you stick with Him? Yosef is a great example. Despite every one of these really hard situations, he says, I'm sticking with you, God. I'm interpreting everything that's happening as for a reason. So the Rambam codifies and says, Shetzivanu l'schaber machachamim l'zyachedi mahem u'lahasmen b'shiva asam b'chol ofen me'ofnei avoda v'achevra b'machal b'mishra v'isa k'desh yagia lanu lidamos b'masayim u'laha'amin ha'amitios midivrayim. Right, we referenced this several weeks ago where we talked about, the Rambam's just quoting the Gemara, can you really cling to God? He's an Eish Ochla, he's a fire that consumes. How can you connect to the source? It's too powerful. So, we connect through his agents. We connect through his emissaries, his ambassadors. When we attach ourselves to those who represent Hashem, then we, through osmosis, it becomes contagious. We are elevated, enriched through that experience. So he says, Lehis Chaber, attach yourself to Talmidei Chachamim. Spend time with them. Consult with them. Sit with them. You should be fighting over who can host our different scholars and residents and Rabbanim and Rosh Yeshiva and Rebbetzin Tzipora Heller last weekend. Men, women, people of great Emunah. We should be fighting. I want to have him. Because, Gadol Sichasan, the Sicha B'Teila, you learn more from the casual conversation with great people than you do even from their classes. You could learn their Sefer, you could listen to the Dvar Torah, but the casual conversation, observing them in a casual moment, you learn even more, which is what the Rambam says. B'machal u'v'mishta, eat and drink, v'esek, interact, kedei she'agi lanu hidamos b'ma'aseyim, so that we can emulate, so that we have something to aspire to. I talked about not only doing this physically with great people, but doing it virtually, by reading biographies, and by watching, and by listening, and by attaching ourselves to these people. So the Rambam says that's how you achieve this mitzvah. Bitachon is interpreting everything in your life through the lens that it's meant to be, that it's for the good, even when we struggle to understand it at that moment. And ubot tidbak, how do you cling to God, is you cling to God's closest confidence. When you cling to God's closest confidence, that's how you get... in life, there are people who are close to great people, and they feel people are trying to cling to them, right? They want to get... How do I get close to the star? How do I get close to that leader? How do I get close to that powerful person, that rich person? When I get close to the people around them. So that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. One of the ways to get close to Hashem is to get close to the people closest to Hashem. And that's how we get access and insight into Him. The other interpretation of Dveikus, the Rambam includes within the mitzvah of loving God. Right? The Rambam describes loving God not as like... We've totally abused that word love. We've totally taken all meaning away from the word love. We love the people closest to us, and we use the exact same word to describe pizza, or to describe our favorite song, or to describe our favorite show. Oh, I love that song. Oh, I love that restaurant. Oh, I love that. Oh, and honey, I love you. Right? So there's no word left. We're out of words, because that's supposed to be the most powerful word to describe when we love the people closest to us, and it's a genuine thing. I hate when people, you hang up and say, love you. Rabbi, I love you. I never say I love you back, because I don't love them. I love them. I love them. I love all Jews. I love them. But if I say I love you to a person I have a casual friendship with, what's left to say to Yocheved and my kids, my mother? What's left to say to the people who you love and you want to express that love in a different way? So the Rambam says the love you're supposed to have with Hashem is not like pizza. I love pizza. And I love Hashem too. He does good things for me. Right? The love for Hashem is supposed to be... I mentioned this last week too. You know when that couple's dating and they finally get engaged and you can't be in a room with them because it's nauseating, you want to throw up? You know, oh, isn't he so cute? Oh, isn't she so adorable? Oh, isn't this so amazing? Isn't this aren't they so perfect? Aren't they? And you're like, you can't be near them. So the Rambam literally writes, that's the love you're supposed to have for Hashem. Like, I'm infatuated with Hashem. I am obsessed with Hashem. I adore Hashem. I can't get enough of Hashem. I'm just obsessed with Hashem. That's the love affair. That's the yearning. That's the lust. That's the infatuation we're supposed to have with Hashem. So the Slonim Rebbe is asking this question on the Rambam. The Rambam is describing loving Hashem the way we would have thought clinging to Hashem, and describing clinging Hashem as attaching yourself to the people close to Hashem. Why take it out from the simple interpretation? Simple interpretation is ubotidbak, clinging to Hashem is clinging to Hashem. Why did the Rambam deviate? V'chein kusha hafla. So the hafla asked this question. You can't fulfill clinging to Hashem yourself. It's only through an intermediary. Moshe Rabbeinu alav Hashem lo mitzvah mitzvah. What, Moshe didn't have this commandment himself? Moshe also had this commandment. Who was he supposed to cling to? Right, so every one of us has a Rebbe we cling to. Who was Moshe supposed to cling to? Gam kasha shekol elu gedolei achronim hafla pnei Yeshua told us v'avodas Yisrael od kam achronim shekulam b'dei achas shemitzvah pshuta v'rak eit tova kamash malan sheyuchlu gam hem lekayim hamitzvah yidei shidbuku b'tamidei chachamim lo hizker echem mehem ki yishitas haramim ein okain. So the simple understanding of the mitzvah is just cling to Hashem. Why would the Rambam be reinterpreting it and taking it out of its simple meaning to suggest that clinging to Hashem is clinging to Talmidei Chachamim? V'lulei demistafina hayanir lefarish b'dvarav mitochomer hakushos u'lahos b'zeh mashmaos miyuchedos. She'arambam mefarish lashon chazal v'chi efshel yidavik b'shchina she'akushi yigam al Talmidei Chachamim eich efshel yidavik b'shchina. The Rambam is bothered not just that, it's hard if you're not a Talmid Chacham to cling to Hashem, so do your best and cling to Talmidei Chachamim. The Rambam is saying it is almost by definition impossible. How can you cling to someone intangible? How can you cling to someone invisible? How can you cling to someone who is beyond anything that we can imagine? Hatshuva yiki omna mayachad afilu Talmid Chacham in yochel agil hazeh rak al yedei his dabkus. So what's the answer to achieving dveikus? It's a beautiful insight of the Slonim Rebbe. The insight is part of the prerequisite to achieving clinging to Hashem is attaching yourself to others. It's not just that I kind of fulfill clinging to God through attaching to someone close to God. It's that I can't cling to God without attaching to others, without being part of a community, without connecting. Loneliness breeds also a distance, or it closes off certain access to Hashem. Sometimes loneliness brings greater faith, right? The Rav's lonely man of faith. Sometimes you can feel lonely and alone, and it reminds you that you're not alone and you're not lonely, and you always have Hashem. But if you're not part of a tzibur, being part of a community is so fundamental to the Jewish people. Clinging and caring about others is so fundamental to connecting to God. Because where do you find God? Where does God become visible? How is God tangible? How can you physically get a hug from God? Because people are Tzelem Elokim. People are a piece of God in them. There is a godly soul and a godly spirit. Now some people, there's layers and layers and layers covering that godly soul. It's really, to squeeze that God out of them would be a really tight hug. It's really hard to find. You need a magnifying glass and a telescope and I don't know what, to find that godly soul in them is really hard. But there's other people that the godly soul is right on the surface. They're so special, they're so kind, they're so sweet, they're so spiritual. There's something so special about them. That just being around them, you're around God. So that's what he's suggesting within the Rambam. The Rambam is not saying we can't achieve the ideal, so we define the mitzvah as the secondary, which is to connect to Talmidei Chachamim. The Rambam is saying, even within the definition of the ideal, you cling to God. How? He's invisible. I can't touch him, I can't feel him, I can't hear him. So how do I cling to him? When can I touch him? When I see the God in other people. When I see the godly soul and the godly spirit in other people. When I see greatness. When I see that which is worthy of awe and admiration. when I see selflessness, when I see humility, when I see kindness, when I see all the values that God stands for, the things that are really the expression of a godly soul in others, I'm seeing God. I see the God in you. I'm seeing God. So how do I achieve ubod tidbak? How do I cling to God? By clinging to the God in others. Lama yigar Hashem avinu mitoch mishpachto sheperish kishem ben Hashem yisbarach inu misyachis al yachid rak ayidei bechinas mishpachto zoch lahasik Hashem yisbarach yikra Allah b'shem avinu. Kain yefshal agil dvekas ela yidei dvekas b'tamid chachamim v'zeh shayach gam b'tamid chacham atzmam shetrichim lios dvukim yachtav. So even the Talmid Chacham can't connect to the God in themselves. If they're trying to access a relationship with God, it's not to the God in their own Tzelem Elokim. What are they going to look in the mirror and say, oh, the good in you I connect with? It doesn't work. Even they have to find a Talmid Chacham. And again, we're using the word Talmid Chacham broadly here, not as how many Dape Gemara you know by heart, but men or women, righteous people who are emissaries and ambassadors of Hashem in this world. One of the commentaries in the Rambam called the Kiryat Sefer. We should attach our thoughts to Hashem in all moments. When we're eating, Hashem is in this cup of water. Hashem has provided the environment, the what's it called? The ambiance. Shakol niyeh b'dvaro, that everything, even the ambiance, is created by Hashem's word. When I eat, when I drink, when I sleep, when I'm watching football, when I'm going for a walk, when I'm experiencing recreation, in everything I do, it's measured by, do I seek God in this? How can I be greater from this? How can I elevate myself through this experience? How can I ever get to a point that I can see Hashem in the cup of water, in the sky, in the lake, in the traffic light, in the conversation, in the everything? How do I see Hashem in that? So the answer is, if I can't see Hashem in you, I'll never see Him in the cup of coffee. If I can't see Hashem in a person through whom Hashem is expressed more clearly, more boldly than anything else, then I'll never come to see Him in the cup of coffee. And that's why the Rambam creates the definition of Dveikus in this order and according to that hierarchy. Why? Because I have to learn, train myself to see the Hashem. It's really it kind of connects to the drush I gave a couple weeks ago, that our mission in life is to be angels. We look for angels that come from heaven. But angels are born here on earth. And there are angels on earth all around us. And it's all a question of who we focus on, who we see. You could see, the Eisvarf, miserable, low-life, complaining, negative, terrible people, of which there are no shortage of them, everywhere, right? Interacting with us all the time. Just this morning, someone was complaining to me about an experience at the supermarket and at the checkout and how that... And you're right, there's terrible people on every checkout. You could look at the negative experience. On every checkout, you can see the positive people. There are people all around us that you have access to seeing God. There are great people, selfless, kind, good-hearted people, peace-loving people, sensitive people, spiritual people who are amazing, who you feel better about yourself when you walk away from that experience with them. I love being around those people who have emunah and bitachon. I love being around the people who have miserable lives and they're the happiest people. Because how could you complain? Because they found a way to say that whatever I'm going through is meant to be. It's not going to define me. I can find happiness in it. And that's amazing. That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So that's, how do you achieve dveikus? How do you cling to Hashem? Cling to the Hashem in other people. Find it. Identify it. Articulate it. And cling to it. We have a choice. We could surround ourselves by the people who bring us down. We could surround ourselves by the people who make us feel worse about ourselves. We could surround ourselves by the people who are obstacles to our becoming the best version of ourselves. Or we can sit and calculate who are the people that bring the most out of us. I have a learning group, a group of guys, business leaders, and we learn together and we discuss business issues together. So we were talking about this week how many create end of the Gregorian calendar year. They set aside time to evaluate the year and to set goals for the next year. And how do you do that? And what does it look doing like that? And so on. And one of them shared something very interesting. He said he actually takes his entire calendar of the previous year and looks over the whole calendar. Wow. Not every second of every day, but the big things. How many trips did he take? And in the coming year, does he want to take the same or less or more trips? How does that balance with everything else he has to do? What were the social experiences he had? Does he want more or did he want less? So he said one of the things that he does, I thought this was fascinating, is when he talks about like his friends, who did he go out for dinner with? This is actually not an observant person. We might measure it by like reviewing who our Shabbos meals were, who our Shabbos invitations were. Right? That's a tremendous cheshbon hanefesh. To look back at the last year of Shabbos and say, who did I invite? Only my friends or even people who needed meals? Within the friends that the Shabbos meals became places of divrei Torah and chesed, and I walked away having talked about ideas and better person, or did I walk away talking about people? And when he looks at his calendar and he looks at these relationships and he looks at who he went out to dinner with, he says, who helped me become better this year and who held me back? Because those who held me back, I'm not going out for dinner with next year. Life is too short, and my goals are too big and important to be weighed down and held back by the people who are negative influences. Now you've got to do that in a very sensitive and elegant fashion, right? First of all, I'm waiting to see whether I get invited out to dinner with him next year. I don't know if I make the cut, where I fall in the chain, but because you can't, ditch unceremoniously, simply cast aside the people who don't make you better because they also need your positive influence. What will their lives look like if you cold turkey, end the friendship, pull away, tell them you want nothing to do with them? So I'm advocating you have to do it sensitively and carefully. However, what a brilliant and beautiful idea that a person says, I have goals in life. They're not only measured by a profit margin and a revenue, my income, how I did this year. They're measured by, am I becoming a better version of me? Am I becoming a better person? Am I a better version of myself? Have I grown this year? What are the things that propelled me forward, and what are the obstacles that stood in my path? And in the coming year, this is really an Elul Rosh Hashanah conversation, but we happen to be heading towards the secular New Year. But in the coming year, I want more of the things that propelled me forward, and I'm going to cut out and have less of the things that held me back. That could include hobbies and experiences. You could review your calendar and say, wow, I played so much golf. If you add up how many hours I spent on that, and I claim I don't have time to read a book, that was ridiculous, right? Or you could look and say, you know what, golf was where I had breakthrough moments and ideas, and I had the serenity that I needed because I wasn't taking time for myself, and I need more golf. I'm not adding a label or a judgment on any of the activities. It could be people, it could be activities, but the notion that, and this is what the Slonim Rebbe is suggesting to us, Dveika, seeing Hashem on the golf course and in the books you read and who you go out to dinner with, is the people who the Tzelem Elokim is buried under many layers. I don't know that I want to build that friendship. And the people that it's right on the surface, that's who I want to hang out with. Because we are a product of who we hang out with. The Rambam says it very clearly in Hilchos Deos. Choose where you live very carefully because you are a product of who you hang out with. I actually just saw this quote from secular research also that said basically, you are a combination of the 4 people you spend the most time with. That's what it said. You are the combination of the 4 people you spend the most time with. I don't know how you measure that and how accurate it is. But there is no question that we are a product of who we're with. We all know that being with different people brings out different sides of us. So which side of us is the real us? Which side of us do we want to see more? And that should determine who we want to hang out with. But this idea that living emunah and bitachon, right, to conclude, living emunah and bitachon is not just, and dvekus, is not just about seeing Hashem, in the sky, the distant, almighty creator, omnipotent providence. It's not just about the God up there. Emunah, bitachon, dvekus is about seeing God in the angels born on earth. It's making the choice. Just like seeing God, just like the emunah and bitachon of Hashem upstairs is all about the choice you make. Do I want to interpret this event as random and chance, or do I want to interpret this event as being by design? That's a choice I have. So too, I can walk around the world and say, there's miserable, terrible, negative people, or wow, look at the Tzelem Elokim in that person. Look at the godliness that they just displayed in that amazingly selfless act that they just did. Such and such donated their kidney. So and so. There's incredible Tzelem Elokim all around us. So part of the way when our faith is suffering, when we're struggling, is not only to talk about the big picture emunah, the macro emunah, but it's to also work on the micro emunah, to work on the emunah of finding exceptional people and attaching ourselves to them, realizing they're extraordinary people, and being able to ride their coattails of their faith. You know the story, the great story of the Bluzhever Rebbe? I've used this in a Yizkor Drasha. This is the great story where the Nazis at one point rounded up a group of Jews and challenged them. They had to jump over this enormous cavern, and if they made it to the other side, they would live, and if they didn't, they would fall to their death. And this individual who was with the Bluzhever Rebbe, an individual who had previously been religious but had given up his faith in the concentration camp, said to the Bluzhever Rebbe, I have no idea how I'm going to get to the other side, how we're going to do it. And the Bluzhever Rebbe said, I'm butchering the story because I didn't read it recently, but we're going to be able to do it. And Bluzhever Rebbe, runs and jumps and makes it to the other side. And right behind him comes this other individual. And he says to the Bluzhever Rebbe, how did you do it? That was an impossible jump. We're weak. How did you do it? He said, because I pictured my ancestors, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Sarah, Rachel, and Leah. I pictured my grandparents and my parents, and I grabbed onto them, and they carried me to the other side. And he turned to him and he said, but how did you do it? How did you? You don't believe anymore. You've walked away. How did you get to the other side? And he said, Rebbe, I grabbed onto you. So that story, which is so much better than the way I just said it, that story is exactly another form of dvekus. Sometimes, right, like that individual, when you have trouble seeing Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, when you have trouble grabbing onto the heritage and the religion and the theology and the highfalutin terminology and the omnipotent God, but you grab onto the Bluzhever Rebbe, you grab onto the great people around you, the Tzelem Elokim around you, whether it's the stories like that of the Bluzhever Rebbe. I'm reading this book on the Kloisenberger Rebbe, among the 10 books I'm in the middle of. When I say reading means like at a pace that, whatever. But read these books. Read these great individuals. We've talked about this. Henny Machlis and the Rebbetzin Kanievsky and the Kloisenberger Rebbe and the Bluzhever Rebbe. And there's incredible books, the many books that came out about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You read these books, you get goosebumps and you're on fire. You're grabbing onto them as they jump and carry us with them. Even when I'm not ready to sit down and learn Mesilas Yesharim and Nesiv Shalom, I'm not ready to hear the Rambam describe Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem. I just don't see that. Sometimes the breakthrough is to see the great Ubot Tidbak. The Dvekus comes by attaching ourselves to the Tzelem Elokim within great people. And when we do, please God, we'll make it to the other side. Have a great day.